All right, so I'm going to take you through a couple of slides to introduce, and then I will be handing over to a couple of guests and also colleagues as well who are on the call. So unless I've forgotten anything, without further ado, here we go. So the agenda for today, then, I'll give you a quick welcome from the Energy Systems Catapult. So I'm sure many of you are familiar with us, but just in case you're not, I'll give a very quick overview of who we are and what we do. I'm also really pleased to welcome Andrew Byrne from the British Embassy, Bangkok, who's going to say a few words and welcome. Then I will give you a quick market overview of the Thai market, having a look at some of the opportunities that are there. I'll hand over to my colleague, Eric Appleton, who's the incubation manager on our team. He'll give an overview of what you can expect from the program. And then I'm really pleased as well to invite one of our alumni from our previous Thai mission, Nick Schulman of BlockDocs. He'll be arriving a little later, but he would like to talk a little bit about his experience of the last mission that we did, to give you more of an insider's view. It's not just taking our word for it. And then finally, there'll be a wrap up, and you'll get the link to the application form and also to things like the market deep dive and the Smart Cities Handbook, which will help to inform your decision. So I will go now straight into just talking a little bit about the Energy Systems Catapult, who we are and what we do. So the Catapults were set up by UK government in areas of the economy that we wish to accelerate. So there are 9 catapults based all around the UK. The Energy Systems Catapult is based in Birmingham. We work very closely with several of the other catapults, for example, the Offshore Renewable Energy Catapult, some of you may know of, and also the Connected Places Catapult we work with as well. The idea is that we should be bridging the gap between different stakeholders, so between industry, government, and academia. We're not for profit, and we're here to open up opportunities for UK firms. So we have several different capabilities and platforms around the Catapult, of which our innovator support is one, but we also pull on different capabilities such as the modeling. We have market regulation and policy expertise, digital and data expertise. And in any one of our projects, we can kind of pull on people from those different teams in order to create bespoke programs. And both domestically and overseas, we're here to unleash innovation and also to open up new markets. We have expertise across the whole energy system. So we've got people within our different teams. You've got engineers and experts and consultants who work in power systems, who are familiar with infrastructure, with industry. We have our social scientists who are there studying consumer insight trends. We have a transport and engineering team. And the point is that we are looking at the whole energy system. So we're not looking at things in silos, in recognition that to find a least cost energy transition, you need to be looking at all of the different aspects together. And then finally, I'll get to the Energy Launchpad International. So that's our little team at the Catapult. And the Energy Launchpad International was set up to respond to 2 things. So we know from working with innovators that the 2 main barriers to successful commercialization overseas is market, so in-market contact, so the relationships and the partnerships, but also intelligence on the market. And that includes facts and figures about the energy system, but it also is broader than that. And it's things like culture and communication, how you do business in a country. And so the Energy Launchpad International was set up to try and address these 2 barriers, to make use of our capabilities and assets and tools delivered by us, a little dedicated team. I always say in the corner of the Catapult, because that's where we sit in the office, but that's not been true for about 18 months, I guess. And with there, we work really closely with our in-country partners, such as the embassy staff and also the private sector in some cases, to establish local engagement and facilitate that introductions and the engagement with the local market. I'm going to hand over now to Andrew Byrne from the British Embassy, Bangkok. He's going to say a few words of welcome. Andrew, are you there?
Good morning, Ruth. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Andrew. I work at the Embassy as what we call the Economic and Prosperity Councillor, which basically means I deal with the UK's relationship with Thailand on economic things, energy things, environment, climate, a range of other areas, including science. I'm going to give you a quick overview on the embassy. Apologies for the dodgy lighting and everything else here. I am quarantining unexpectedly, so I'm not doing this from the office as I had planned. So, Thailand, beautiful beaches, great food, rooftop bars, rides and tuk-tuks, elephants, tigers. For those of you who haven't been to Thailand, I can confirm that all the stereotypes are true. It is a fantastic place to visit. But I think what we talk about a lot less, or at least before I came here, what I was much less aware of, is that Thailand is also the second largest economy in Southeast Asia, with a population of 70 million. And it's growing rapidly, and it has been for sort of 7 decades now. And today, I'm just going to give you a quick outline on a couple of things that I think are interesting in the energy sector specifically, as well as, what it might be like very briefly for you if you choose to try and export or work in Thailand, and then maybe just finish off with a little bit on working with the embassy. So Thailand is an interesting country. I don't know if you've visited Bangkok, but for those of you who have, you might have seen that Bangkok is now a very modern-looking metropolis. About half of Thailand's GDP is generated by Bangkok alone. And in fact, there are malls here that use more electricity in a year than entire provinces outside of Bangkok. But the demand for electricity, the demand for energy is steadily increasing, about 1–2% a year, maybe a bit more even. And historically, Thailand has met that demand with a lot of fossil fuels. So looking at primary energy demand here in Thailand, in the first 9 months of this year, it was sort of 40%-ish being filled by natural gas, another 35-ish by oil, and another 15-ish by coal. So you can see, the vast majority, nearly 90%, coming from fossil fuels. And even looking at the power sector, you've got sort of 70-ish% of power coming from fossil fuels and a further 15% imported. But Thailand is starting to change in line with the rest of the world. And I wanted just to highlight 3 strategic shifts, which probably won't surprise you, are quite similar to the sort of areas that the Energy Catapult is focusing on that might be of interest to you, and I think kind of shape the way we think about how the energy sphere is changing in Thailand. So the first is on the power sector. And Thailand has this way that it operates where it basically sets out a 20-year plan, and historically it's called its power development plan, looking at how it wants its energy mix to change and what it wants to bring into the mix and how it wants to balance energy security and price and cleanliness and so on. And it's quite an interesting setup because you've got one major energy company, which is called EGAT, Energy Generation Authority Thailand, which produces sort of 45% of the power here. And then you've got a bunch of independent producers that produce the rest. So when Thailand does its energy planning, it sort of has this hybrid system of telling its monopoly producer what to do and also working with its kind of energy regulator, its Ofgem equivalent, to kind of shape regulation and policy to make whatever it wants happen. In the last year and a bit, a new Deputy Prime Minister, who's also the Energy Minister, has come to power, a guy called Deputy Prime Minister Supathanaphong. And he is quite different from his predecessors in that he's a little bit visionary, and he has asked that the Thai government come up with something new, which they're calling the Energy Plan 2022. And it brings into being a couple of concepts which I think are really interesting and will point to a big low carbon transition here. So the first is they plan to have more than 50% of their power generated from renewables. Now, we don't yet know what the timetable for that will be, but we expect it to be, 10, 15, 20 years. But nevertheless, there will be interim targets and immediate targets in that area. And we expect that that will result in quite a lot of use of solar power. Thailand prefers solar to other forms of renewables. It doesn't have a lot of wind. It does some onshore wind, but mostly solar power. And historically, it's done quite a lot of large solar arrays, but now it's looking more at sort of floating solar, which is a new concept here, and rooftop solar, and basically smaller scale solar, which we'll come on to because that's going to be one of my sort of second shift that I'm going to highlight. So they have this power plan. It also calls for Thailand to be net zero in the energy sector in terms of its greenhouse gas emissions by 2065. And I think they may even push that forward. So a bit like you probably see in other countries, that's requiring a whole sort of wider deployment of technology and policies and social change. And we expect to start seeing that coming online probably in the next 6 months. They haven't yet finalized their energy plan. But it's going to require big changes. And I should have said, along with technology and policy and social change, financing will be a key challenge around that. The second thing, which is sort of linked to that, is with this move to smaller scale generation, there's much more of a shift to sort of smart grids and sort of smart power infrastructure, and B, I'm sure those of you in the energy sector have a better description for this, but I would describe it as the sort of smaller scale technologies to facilitate smaller scale transactions and a sort of more liberal market that has more players in it. So smart grids, energy trading systems, systems for recording and managing credits associated with renewable energy, this kind of collection of things that are much more associated with a larger proportion of small scale generators. And a lot of the big companies in Thailand, and in particular, there are two that are responsible for most of the grid, are looking now very actively and asking for support on these kind of technologies. And then the last shift I wanted to mention was around electric vehicles, because Thailand is a major automobile manufacturer, a bit like the UK in terms of size of production and the fact that it does a lot for other countries to use. It is targeting having 5 to 6 million electric vehicles on its own roads by 2030, with that upping to sort of 15 million by 2035, which is more than half of the vehicle fleet. And it has essentially nothing right now to make that happen. EV charging stations are becoming more common, although they're almost all privately owned in Bangkok. And that's pretty much the extent of its infrastructure. So we've been talking to the Ministry of Energy and to others about supporting that transition and about the kind of infrastructure they will need. But pretty much everything around electric vehicles will be required, I think, in Thailand over the coming 5 years if it is to do what it plans to. So there's really big scope in terms of technology there. I haven't mentioned, but perhaps should have done, energy efficiency, which is another area where we just see continued steady progress, I would say, from the Thai government, and can be quite exciting. So in terms of your company, I think there are plenty of opportunities. I was asking about the companies that have signed up to this event, and I understand it's quite filled with kind of innovative companies. I would say the Thais in general are actively seeking innovative companies and innovative solutions in the energy sector, and would be keen to engage with you if you're bringing something that fits that description. I would say they're pretty interested, I would say, in technology. We're bringing them around on services. To the question in chat on storage, they're asking a lot of questions about storage. They're not yet active on storage. When we last spoke to the Deputy Prime Minister, he actually asked us for more information on storage, but they haven't yet kind of taken the jump to actually doing more on it, or committing to. We are hopeful that in response to their energy plan, they will come up with a plan around storage of all forms. And if your company has solutions on that, I think you could definitely find people who are interested here. Okay, so back to the market itself, the opportunities for your companies. There are also fairly significant challenges to entering the Thai market, as frankly there are in any developing country. We are aware that there are quite a lot of what we consider sort of behind the border barriers. And that's why this kind of initiative from the Energy Systems Catapult is so welcome. I would note that for us as an embassy, we do some work on energy. We don't do a lot of work on energy. My team does some to support the kind of policy side of things. However, our Department of International Trade is really happy to support, also working really in partnership with the Catapult. So I'm very pleased that we have this program today, and I really hope that it leads to some formal sort of opportunities for all of you involved in this. And if you have questions for us as an embassy, or are seeking specific support because you're trying to get into the market, of course, the Catapult will start that, but we're very happy to support also. So thank you so much for your time. Ken and Talat, I think you have a wider briefing on this coming up. So I don't want to, I could be wrong, but I think we've got a Thai market overview coming directly after this from the Catapult themselves, which is going to give you more details. I'm happy to have a go at answering these questions, but I don't want to preempt Ruth, who's looking at me like, don't spoil my, don't steal my thunder.
No, not at all. No, thank you ever so much, Andrew. That was a really, really fantastic overview, and thank you ever so much. Yeah, I'm going to try and attempt to match what you've just done and give a little bit more info on the market. Perhaps I should do that, and then we'll open the questions to both of us, and we'll attempt to field those questions between us. Sure. Because some of the, yeah, you're right, some of the questions that are popping up in the chat, I'm hoping that I'll be able to answer in my session in a moment. Does that sound okay to you?
Sounds good to me. Absolutely.
All right. Okay, so thank you ever so much. Thank you. And thank you everybody for your questions in the chat. I'll do a quick overview now of the Thai market that was based on the research that we did last year for the first mission to Thailand, and then we'll pause for some questions to both Andrew and myself, if that's okay. So the Thai energy system, as Andrew said, it's not yet liberalized. The state bodies are the sole buyers and distributors of power. EGAT, the Electricity Generating Authority of Thailand, is the main authority. They are responsible for transmission and for, I think Andrew said, around 40% of generation as well. They also are responsible for buying all of the power from your independent power producers. The distribution to the end users is the responsibility of the Metropolitan Electricity Authority and the Provincial Electricity Authority, which I guess you can kind of tell from their titles. One is sort of for the Bangkok area, and the Provincial Electricity Authority is sort of for the rest of the country. So end users can also buy directly from very small power. Oh, yeah, thank you, Andrew. Sorry, I got carried away. There we are. So yes, so in terms of being able to buy directly from producers, End users are able to buy electricity from the so-called VSPPs who are in their area, but they must all be on the same wire. So you can't at the moment do aggregation, for example, where you are buying from somebody who is in a different area to you on the grid geographically. And Andrew mentioned already that Thailand has huge ambitions to become a regional hub for EVs. And is also investing just under £5 billion over the next 15 years in smart grids. No, so this statistic, as you've heard, is kind of 12 months out of date. They were originally planning to deploy 1.2 million EVs. Now they're looking to deploy around 15 million. So they've become a lot more ambitious. It is still, the power system is still really dependent on fossil fuels and interconnection to neighboring Myanmar, for example, for gas, although they have some ambitious variable renewable energy targets in place. We've already had a question, I think, from one of the people who are on the call, which is fantastic to see such enthusiasm about smart metering. So Thailand is piloting a smart meter rollout. It's looking to deploy initially in the Bangkok area and then follow up further. It's worth saying as well that I think that in Thailand, they're very keen on digitalizing the whole economy. They have set up, for example, they have set up the True Park Incubator Accelerator in Bangkok, which is there to try and accelerate digitalization of entrepreneurship and also of kind of the public service, etc. Looking at the business model opportunities, so for large storage, there have been a handful of government-funded projects that have gone beyond the pilot stage. But I think Andrew was indicating just now that for the moment, at least, that's not terribly developed. It's also just by, I guess, because of the way that the market is set up, the main customer there is going to be IGAT. And I think Talat has put a comment there in the chat that, yeah, so follow-up has been quite slow with IGAT. Microgrids, then, there's the power development plan, which looks to open up new business opportunities for foreign solar companies. It's also the government in Thailand is really looking to make P2P business models possible. Electric transport, we've already mentioned, and energy efficiency as well. So Thailand has been really, really forward thinking in energy efficiency as one of the region's biggest manufacturers of air conditioning units, for example. And bear in mind that this is a region that is with rapidly increasing incomes. It's also, you're seeing a lot of air conditioning units being sold every single year, and a lot of them are being manufactured in Thailand. And Thailand have been really amazing at creating this energy efficiency labeling system. And I believe there is a similar system in place for buildings as well. So these are strongly supported by the government and sort of a very common sight around Thailand. So just to kind of summarize then, I won't read to this slide because it'll start getting boring and I'm sure you're burning with questions. There are a couple of other opportunities. So for example, in biomass, so in response to the damage to the economy that was done by the COVID pandemic, the so-called Thai Board of Investment incentivized energy from waste, because out in the countryside, you have abundant biomass resources to support. And the idea was that this would help to support mainly rural communities who'd been hit hardest by the pandemic. And so they would be sort of guaranteed contracts to sell their excess biomass, their excess waste in order to make energy from waste. The Board of Investment is a really interesting one. There's much more about this in the Thai market deep dive that we produced, but the Thai Board of Investment is a very interesting angle. They are there to, well, they're there for many things, but one of the things that falls under their jurisdiction is that they are able to grant exemptions to tax. They're allowed to grant exemptions to the quite strict foreign ownership rules, etc. So many of the smart clean energy business models and activities do fall under the Thai Board of Investment. And so therefore, there are a number of incentives attached to to encourage the growth of these industries in Thailand that you access through the Thai Board of Investment. And I think probably the final thing to mention is that in Thailand you have as in many countries, they have set up these kind of economic corridors, which again, inside these economic corridors, in order to stimulate economic growth, they have relaxed. In some cases, they have relaxed some of the sort of laws around foreign ownership. And you may shout at me in a minute and say that and correct me. So, but I believe that they are also offering things like tax breaks for companies that set up in those economic corridors. I'm going to stop there because I can see lots of juicy questions arriving in the chat. I'm also aware that probably Andrew has the answer to a lot of these, and we'll do our best to field them. So Andrew, if you wouldn't mind coming back online, I'll stop sharing my screen.
Sure.
Perfect. I hope I didn't misrepresent anything there.
Yeah, I think you did a great job, Ruth. Thank you very much for providing the summary. And I assume everyone's getting the slides at the end of this, because I know one of the questions from Talat was about the names of the companies, and I know they were on one of those slides. So, yeah.
Okay. For sure. Yeah, no, that's super. Hi, Nick. How are you doing? Would you
Hi,
mind?
good, thanks. Off. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. All right, super. If we could go through the questions then, were there any, Andrew, that you were desperate to answer?
No, I can have a go at answering all of these, although I'm not sure I know off the top of my head the size threshold for very small producers. There is one, Alex, I can't remember what it is. We can find that out. Shall I have a go with the caveat that I am not an expert on this as a whole? I work with the Thai government on energy. I tend to look more at the sort of big picture policy, but let me have a go. And Ruth, if you have more to add, do you want to just like raise a hand as I whiz through the questions? Absolutely. And then I'll know.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. And I will just say, sorry, I will just say that anything, so the ones we need to get back to you. So for example, the size threshold on the VSPPs, we'll follow up with an email and we'll find that out for you.
Fab. Thanks, Ruth. So Talat, I think I already mentioned on storage. They are very interested in battery storage. They see this as a key challenge, but they haven't, or any other form of storage for that matter, but they haven't yet gone as far as actually setting out a plan on this. I hope that when they come to their energy plan 2022, they'll do more on that. And actually, one of the things we're trying to do is support them by providing kind of UK expertise to help shape and design their energy plan and policy going forward. And that's a key area that we'll be speaking to them about. So I think there's definitely opportunity to talk more to them and potentially even sell tech and services at this point. Ken, you asked about opportunities for micro hydro in localized grids. Yes, they are interested in sort of localized grids more generally. I think micro hydro, I don't think they're sort of differentiating specifically on particular types of renewables. If anything, I would say they have a slight preference for hydro. It's something that they have in their energy mix already. In terms of sort of local communities here, it's worth, I guess, thinking of Thailand as having quite a built up, I don't know if you can picture Thailand as a map, but basically you've got a sort of a central area, and then you've got kind of a dog leg that goes down to the south, and you've got some offshore islands. And the northern part of Thailand, particularly around the borders with kind of Myanmar and China, is very kind of mountainous and quite jungly. And there are quite a lot of communities there for whom getting power is more challenging. And things like micro hydro and solar and so on are being looked at in terms of kind of community power solutions and of particular interest. And with hydro, for example, actually you have a decent, I mean, pretty much all of the sort of edge, if you can call it that, of Thailand's northern half has mountains around it, or hills, so that there is potentially scope there. They have talked to us quite a lot recently about sort of localized power grids, peer-to-peer energy trading. We actually did some work advising them to support them on how that might work in terms of their regulator. And I think that it would be something they'd be interested in, and you could well find people to work with. Alex, you asked about energy efficiency and if there's any focus on demand response and flexible capabilities. The slightly depressing answer is not yet. I've talked to them a lot about this in the context of, you know, their energy planning. I think they have to start doing it now because, I mean, while we can talk about storage solutions, I think we don't feel collectively that we're there yet. And if they're serious about this 50% renewables target, I think they have to start looking at demand response. And I think, I mean, my suggestion to them and something that I think they're interested in has been that actually they look at doing it in some of their sort of experimental economic zones, where you could potentially look at demand response more in the sort of manufacturing area, bearing in mind that Thailand has just a phenomenal amount of sunny weather. You know, actually demand response for them is not necessarily a problem in the same way as it is for us, because you're getting a lot of uptime out of your solar in particular during the day when you want to be doing presumably most of your manufacturing or whatever it is. I think that that's a discussion that will evolve really fast in the next 6 to 8 months, as I say, as they start to pin down the details of this energy plan. I think that has to come in a big way. So I'm actually quite excited to get into that discussion with them further. And I'm hoping that we'll be at a point where we're actually sort of providing them with specific advice on that. Jane, how would local partnerships work? The easy bit of this answer is, as the embassy or Energy Systems Catapult, we are absolutely happy to work with you on, you know, working with a local company, finding support in the market to do that, or facilitate whatever you would like to do with a local company. Ruth, I don't know if you wanted to come in more on that, given it's sort of a, you know, plays into what you're doing, and then I can go on to the next one.
No, thank you very much, Andrew. I was just about to reply in the chat box, actually. So Eric, my colleague Eric, will speak about what the program offers in a moment, and I hope you'll be reassured that the engagement part is high on our priority list. So we'll pass for now, because hopefully Eric will be able to answer that question.
Yes. So I think that would be for the Catapult to do in the first place, Jane, but later I mean, the embassy does help with this kind of stuff too, and of course we could support on that. How would local partnerships work? The actual sort of nitty gritty of it is probably better answered offline, because it's quite a complex answer in that it depends what you're trying to do. If you're just trying to sell into the market, or whether you'd be looking to set up a small office here, or, you know, it'll depend very much on the nature of your company, but there are certainly solutions there. Jacob, are there government and government affiliated accelerators for startups for zero emission mobility? Not to my knowledge yet, Jacob. Ruth, I think that might be one that we take away just to double check. I'm fairly confident that the answer is no, not yet. They created their target, Jacob, in terms of producing electric vehicles. They announced it in sort of February, March, and they're still, to be honest, trying to figure out how they're going to enable this. We get a lot of questions from them, and in fact, we're doing a whole series of work with them on the transition to electric vehicles, both in terms of on the roads and, you know, the basics of kind of having the right infrastructure, but also in terms of what that means for your production as a manufacturer of vehicles. if you have particular ideas on this, on things that would be useful to have, do say, because I think they are in the market for this stuff. I will check whether they have it already, but if not, maybe we can even talk to them about, the kind of accelerator that you're talking about. Jen Cannibal, does the Thai Board of Investment supply funding for feasibility works? What kind of feasibility work are you thinking? Are you thinking kind of like for specific projects, or I'm not actually sure if you're able to speak or chat or what on this. I tell you what, I'll give you a generic answer, and then I'll check what you're saying. So the Thai Board of Investment generally doesn't. However, there are a couple of things here, depending on what kind of work or idea or project or whatever it may be. Okay, we supply small scale plants. We need to know if they'd be viable in the local context. Okay. So this is one that we might need to take offline, because it will depend a little bit on what your what your offer is in essence. Most of the time, they probably won't do the work to assess for a specific technology, particularly if you're selling into the market. However, if they have a need for a particular new technology in general, i.e. not your specific technology, but they're looking at feasibility for I don't know, new types of renewables, or a particular renewable project in a part of the country, or whatever it is, they will fund kind of feasibility studies around that, and they will look at different technologies as part of that. And in particular, in some of the special economic zones, they will look more actively at funding that if they think that it creates an opportunity to do something new or a bit innovative. They probably wouldn't fund sort of specific feasibility study for, I don't know, your specific small scale plant, I would guess. Ruth, you look like you want to say something else.
No, please do finish. I'm just wary of the time, and these are such, I think we could sit here all day and talk about these amazing market facts, but once you've finished, Andrew, I think we should probably move on. But everybody, please keep the questions coming in the chat, because we can attempt to answer them, after the session by email. Is that okay?
Sounds good. I think we've covered most of the questions for now, if not all of them anyway, I think. So I think we're good.
All right. No, thank you ever so much. Super interesting. I have the feeling that the questions could probably go on forever, because it's like, oh, quick, we've got an expert. Let's take advantage. All right. So we'll move on now to Eric. Eric Appleton, my colleague here at the Energy Systems Catapult. Eric is the incubation manager. He coached and mentored the UK innovators who were present on the last challenge call, and he's going to talk to you now a little bit about what to expect from the program. So I'll share my screen, Eric, and then
Thank you, Ruth.
Back out.
Great, and nice to see you all this morning, and also a couple of friendly faces that I've met and worked with before. So yeah, if you just pop onto the next slide there. I'm just conscious of time, and I'll do this rather quickly, because I know that Nick actually can give you from BlockDocs will give you first-hand sort of feedback as to their experience on the mission, and how it's going to help you with your export plans. So my role, as Ruth outlined, is as an incubation manager, is really to be your main point of contact throughout the program, throughout the mission, so that I can guide, mentor, and advise, and ensure you get the right sort of support to achieve your goals. And it's so we'll, as with most things in life, it's all in the preparation. So we've got a lot of activity sort of pre-mission to get you familiar with the Thai market, the opportunity, how to do business, the importance of partnerships, as has come up already, is really important. And our main goal here, and working with some of our local partners, is to establish the right contacts and partners for you, so that you can make the most of the opportunity in Thailand, but you will require partners to do that, absolutely. And so that'll be a big focus of our pre-work. We haven't appointed just yet, although it's very close to, a local partner in Thailand to help us with looking at your innovation and how it fits with the local market opportunity and who the right partners for you will be, whether that's direct customers or whether it's distribution, partnerships, operations and maintenance, all that type of good stuff. So we'll make sure that local support will help to do that matching for you. We'll also work with you on developing your pitch, so that when you come to actually speak to those partners or customers, that you're well prepared, that your innovation and the opportunity that it has for the market resonates with them. So we've got an organisation we'll be looking to partner with to help develop that. Last time we did pitch translation as well, using a professional organisation. That went down really well. The Thai companies really appreciated having a properly translated deck, not just a Google translated one, to help them understand your innovations. And all this will sort of lead, I think, to developing your local engagement plan, which outlines your ambitions for the market, how your proposition addresses the opportunity there and the challenges that the Thai market's facing in its transition, and what sort of investments you're going to need to make. And I think anybody who comes on a program will recognise that it's a long-term investment in terms of resource and money that you'll need to put in if you're going to make it a success. And so a local engagement plan will really just help you articulate that and ensure that you get support from your own organisations to pursue this. So and before we even meet any of the in-country companies, you will our local partner rather will be doing some pre-qualification, so meeting with those organisations and just verifying that there's genuine interest for your business. So that will all happen sort of pre-mission, so that's quite a lot. When we get to the in-mission piece, that's where all that preparation will come to fruition, and we'll aim to be lining up with a bunch of different companies to speak to and to engage and attract for you. So and throughout that period, I will personally be holding sort of bi-weekly surgeries just to see how things are going and make sure all's on track and help you answer any sort of questions and queries that you might have. So, but at that point, it's really down to you to sort of stimulate that interest and, we'll agree on kind of what the objective is. Is that securing a customer? Is it finding a partner or distributor to work with, doing a pilot study of some kind, or whatever that meaningful sort of goal is that will help you accelerate your export plan. And then obviously towards the end, we'll do sort of a wrap up and figure out how best to engage next, whether that's directly in market or whether it's through additional support from the Catapult or other organisations that would be of benefit. So that's kind of what to expect. We will be bringing on some third-party experts. So the pre-mission sort of market awareness, we'll have some experts come in to talk to you about cultural things and some of the sort of business ways of doing business and how you might structure agreements and all that kind of stuff that will be sort of really practical. And we've got other third-party experts that we'll bring in as well. So and then, as I say, the kind of goal here is that you'll kind of develop your expert roadmap and make those contacts. But it is a long, I think the opportunity is there, but it will require sort of relatively long-term investment and focus and commitment to be successful. I'm going to hand over now, I think, to Nick Shulman, who's from BlockDocs and was on our first mission to talk to you about their experience earlier this year. So, Nick, I think you're there.
Hi, everybody. I'm here. Would it be possible if you would kindly share my slides?
Yeah, just pulling them up now.
Brilliant. Thanks.
Great.
So, yeah, just while they're bringing up the slides, I thought I'd give you a little bit of a background short background to who BlockDocs are, and then explain our experience of the mission. So if we move on to the next slide. So BlockDocs is a data science and insights focused prop tech platform, and we help organizations solve complex problems in the urban environment using artificial intelligence and the Internet of Things. And if we move to the next slide, the reason why we do this is you may be familiar with the high-rise buildings, for example, at night time, where you can clearly see the lights on and nobody working in them. So these are buildings which are just burning cash and contributing to carbon emissions by providing services to spaces which are either unused or underutilized. So we help these types of building owners and facility managers to provide those services according to actual demand rather than running them on fixed assumptions. And this addresses various inefficiencies which lead to resource wastage. Next slide, please. So we've developed a solution which helps these space operators to make sense of the noise. It's an intelligent software platform where we can bring meaning to data in the form of various types of analytics and insights, and provide our end users with a competitive edge. So that's why BlockDocs was interested in joining this program. We had some prior experience of Southeast Asia, but not Thailand in particular. So this was totally new market for us. Next slide, please. And we had a really positive experience, which I would say even exceeded our expectations at the beginning of the program. So just to run through a few of these. So first of all, we were able to refine and localize our pitch deck with expert help from an organization called, sorry, there's typo, Stronger Stories, and a translator provided by the ESC program. And that landed really well with the Thai companies that we were subsequently speaking to, because they commented to us that the deck came across as a very natural in Thai. It obviously was not just done in Google Translate and so on. And Stronger Stories really helped refine the messaging. So that set us up well. Particularly, we were doing this program, at the height of the pandemic, and were very obviously reliant on virtual meetings. So it was important that the deck did a lot of the heavy lifting. We got a lot of business model and competitor intelligence support as well. So we had a good idea of the landscape and the market prior to having our meetings. And then that led to Arissa International, who are engaged as a local sales resource to speak to, identify a number of companies and then speak to them to arrange meetings for us. So they identified 25 target companies, and we received full description of each of these companies, and had the opportunity to comment and approve or not. But the list was really a strong list, to be honest. And then from that, Arissa arranged 6 introductory meetings the following month. And from that, we spoke to all of these companies, and we had the opportunity to tender for a commercial sales project, and we also agreed terms with a channel partner, a local channel partner, who was able to offer us multiple sales and investment opportunities, as well as being based locally and effectively being able to, represent us in the Thai market. And we also received investor support from ESC. They've got, a really extensive network with investors who particularly invest in this type of area, and those types of investors are more challenging to identify and reach in the market. Next slide, please. So in terms of the lessons that we learned, first of all, we were able to understand that there's a huge demand in Thailand for BlockDocs, and the solution that we've built is particularly relevant for that market, especially considering the climate there, and therefore the reliance on the air conditioning and mechanical ventilation and so on. Secondly, that there are actually few direct competitors, and therefore lots of opportunity for collaboration. It does require persistence and perseverance, and we've had quite a few stop-start instances because Thailand, as with many countries, has also been suffering from the pandemic and lockdowns and so on. We've needed to adapt our sales style in part to Thai culture and communications. And we think that actually, projects in Thailand will provide a really good anchor for us for expanding across the ASEAN region. Next slide, please. So our favorite part of the program was the Thai culture and communication training, which we found really beneficial and informative in understanding how to communicate properly with the Thai organizations we were speaking to, and a lot of that also is translatable to other countries nearby as well. But yeah, this was very, very useful part of the program. And to give, for example, to give you an example, in the UK and other countries nearby, we don't really use Facebook so much to communicate with customers, whereas in Thailand that's a more common and integral part of business culture over there. So just understanding these nuances, really, email is not as big in Thailand as, for example, maybe WhatsApp. So these kind of approaches can help when communicating in Thailand, and knowing which medium to use and when and so on. So this was a really good part of the program. Next steps, please. So yeah, we've now been working with our new channel partner for some time. We are involved in a number of projects which they've introduced, and we've also developed relations with the British Embassy in Thailand, and also working with them to exploit other opportunities in Thailand. So we've had a really positive experience, and we're looking to build on that moving forwards. So yeah, that's what I wanted to present. I'm not sure if there are questions as part of this session, but if there are, I'm happy to answer any.
Thank you ever so much, Nick. I think it's always so much better to hear it from someone who's not got a vested interest in saying how wonderful the program is. So thank you ever so much for all of your words. I haven't seen any questions in the chat for either you or Eric, and perhaps in the interests of time we ought to wrap up. But as I said, you know, the chat will be open for a couple of minutes, so if anybody does have any last minute questions, pop them in and we can always try and answer them by email afterwards. All right, well, thank you ever so much. I'm just going to share one last slide with you, which just gives you, you know, the next steps from our side. So Nick, thank you ever so much.
Thank you.
That's lovely. And hopefully everybody can see it. Give me a thumbs up if you can see that one. Okay, I'm not getting any thumbs up, but hopefully you can see. Perfect, thanks, Ju. So then just finally to wrap up this session, please take time to consider the opportunity. You have, we'll send these slides to you afterwards, so you'll have the link to the Thai market deep dive that we produced last year that gives you some sort of technical facts and figures about the markets and the key players. The British Embassy also have the Smart Cities Handbook, which is another really good source of information. And I believe that they have other reports that aren't necessarily published online or available online, but it is possible to get in touch with them and ask for copies of these. The application form is really quick and easy. I'm assured the challenge call will close on the 30th. We'll select the new cohort in early December, ready for an intense rollercoaster ride from January through to the end of the year in March. So the final thing really is just to say a huge thank you for attending today, and a really massive thank you as well to both Andrew and Nick for agreeing to come and speak so intelligently about the market and also about their experience that they had on the programme last time. Thank you very much.